Greetings aspirants. Hope you all are doing well. As we have seen in the news that on September 1st, the central government set up a panel headed by former President Ramnath Kovind to explore the feasibility of the One Nation, One Election plan. So in this context, let us try to understand all we need to know about the One Nation, One Election. So firstly, what is this One Nation, One Election? See, the idea of One Nation, One Election centers around the concept of synchronizing the timing of Lok Sabha and the state assembly elections across all states to reduce the frequency of polls throughout the country. After the enforcement of the constitution on 26 January 1950, the first ever general elections to Lok Sabha and all state assemblies were conducted simultaneously in 1951-52. This practice continued into three subsequent Lok Sabha elections until 1967, after which it was disrupted. Why do you think this happened? The cycle was first broken in 1959 after the centre invoked Article 356 of the Constitution, which is related to the failure of constitutional machinery to dismiss the then Kerala government. Subsequently, due to the defections and counter-defections between the parties, several legislative assemblies dissolved post-1960, which eventually led to separate polls for Lok Sabha and state assemblies. So currently, the assembly polls in the states of Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha are held together with Lok Sabha elections. Historically speaking, the idea of simultaneous elections or One Nation, One Election was first formally proposed by the Election Commission of India in its 1983 report. The Commission suggested that conducting simultaneous Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly elections could reduce the frequency and associated costs of elections. Subsequently, the Law Commission of India also examined the issue and submitted several reports suggesting measures to synchronize the terms of the state legislatures with those of Lok Sabha. Our former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a vocal supporter of simultaneous elections. So in 1999, he was elected to the Lok Sabha and he brought the idea with him. However, the proposal did not lead to legislative changes. Then in 2017, the Niti Aayog released a paper which is titled Election Timetable, discussing the feasibility of simultaneous elections. It suggested a practical roadmap for implementing the concept. Then in 2018, the Law Commission of India released a draft working paper that outlined the legal and constitutional aspects of simultaneous elections. Notably, the Commission submitted that simultaneous elections are not feasible within the existing framework of the Constitution. It said that the Constitution, the Representation of People's Act 1951, and the rules of procedure of Lok Sabha and state assemblies would require appropriate amendments to conduct simultaneous polls. The Commission also recommended it receive ratification from at least 50% of the states. However, with respect to advantages of holding simultaneous polls, the Commission said that this will lead to saving of public money, reducing the strain on the administrative setup and security forces, and timely implementation of government policies and administrative focus on developmental activities rather than electioneering. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also stressed the need for debate and discussion on simultaneous elections in his Independence Day speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort in 2019. Several all-party meetings have been called to discuss the feasibility and merits of holding simultaneous elections. Various political parties and stakeholders have also been involved in these discussions. In 2020, the issue was examined by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law and Justice, which was headed by Member of Parliament Anand Sharma. The committee had sought inputs from various stakeholders. Most recently this month, the centre has also constituted a committee under the chairmanship of former President Ramnath Kovind. It will study the electoral process in India. Now, what are the benefits of implementing One Nation, One Election? There are a number of potential benefits to this process. These include, firstly, it could help reduce the overall cost of the elections by eliminating the need to hold them separately. Then, it could also help to create greater political stability by ensuring that governments have a full term in office. Thirdly, it could also help to improve the voter turnout by making it easier for people to vote in all of the elections. But it is also important to note that the implementation of one nation, one election would require constitutional amendments, legal changes, and political consensus, which is a complex and lengthy process. The concept has both supporters as well as detractors, and its feasibility and desirability remain a matter of political discussion and debate in India. The foremost concern is regard to its feasibility. See Article 83 Clause 2 and Article 172 of the Constitution stipulates that the tenure of Lok Sabha and state assemblies respectively will last for 5 years unless dissolved earlier, and there can be circumstances as in Article 356 wherein assemblies can be dissolved earlier. Therefore, the one nation one election plan raises serious questions like what would happen if the central or the state government collapses mid-tenure? Would elections be held again in every state, or will the president's rule be imposed? So, amending the constitution for such a significant change would not only necessitate extensive consideration of various situations and provisions, but would also set a concerning precedent for more constitutional amendments. Secondly, the idea of one nation, one election does not square with the concept of federalism, as it is established on the notion that entire nation is one, contradicting the content of Article 1, which says that India as a union of states. Thirdly, the present form of recurrent elections can be seen as beneficial in a democracy, as it allows voters to have their voices heard more frequently. As the underlying issues of national and state polls are different, the present framework prevents the blending of issues, ensuring greater accountability. But some point to a potential information overload for voters, given that they have to pick their leaders at multiple levels of government at the same time. Every voter has different considerations and consequently different voting preferences at national, state, and regional levels. Simultaneous elections run the danger of national issues eclipsing local issues. This can have a poor impact on voters' decision-making abilities while picking candidates due to confusion or overwhelm. In our country, with a population of almost 150 crores, it is a logistic challenge. In India, elections are festivals of democracy. This requires careful planning and coordination, which can be difficult if simultaneous choices have to be made. Due to the complex nature of the country's political and constitutional framework, implementing one nation, one election in India presents many legal challenges. It would require significant amendments to the Indian Constitution, like the key provisions related to the terms of elected bodies, for instance the Lok Sabha, state assemblies and local bodies. At least 5 articles of the Indian Constitution, which are Article 83, Article 85, Article 172, Article 174 and Article 356, and several statutory laws would have to be amended before any such proposal could be implemented. It will also be necessary for union and state assemblies to have fixed tenures. This means that the House's tenure cannot be extended at any cost except in case of a declared emergency. It would also allow for the House to be dissolved before the expiry of its term. So, amending the Constitution is a lengthy and politically challenging process that requires a 2/3 majority in both the Houses of Parliament, and also states will have to give the consent. Also, coordinating the terms of different levels of government like the centre, state and local to simultaneously coincide with the election cycle is legally complex. For example, the terms of state governments vary, and some states are given special provisions under Article 371 of the Constitution. State governments in India have large degree of autonomy and can oppose any move that violates their powers. This move amounts to an attack on the autonomy of the states, and also it may affect their independent functioning, which is constitutionally protected. Similarly, local elections follow a decentralized system of governance in which local bodies enjoy significant autonomy. Simultaneous elections would require changes to the laws governing local body elections to align them with the new election cycle. Though simultaneous elections may lower election expenditures, they have their financial and administrative challenges. Its implementation will require the allocation of massive financial and administrative resources. So, implementing such a change would require sound legal framework for budget allocation and resource coordination. Simultaneous elections may also require amendments to anti-defection laws to prevent legislators from switching parties in line with the election cycle, which could potentially weaken the spirit of the concept. Also, legal representation in courts may be affected too. The number of cases in courts at different levels like the national, state and local may increase during elections, thereby affecting the judicial process. Then, achieving political consensus on holding simultaneous elections among different political parties, especially regional parties, is a legal and political challenge in itself. Convincing all political stakeholders to agree on the necessary legal changes is a significant hurdle. So, what are the steps we can take? Here are some of the key steps that need to be taken in order to implement One Nation, One Election. Firstly, there needs to be a broad consensus on the need for One Nation, One Election among all political parties. Then the constitution needs to be amended to provide for One Nation, One Election. Also, the Election Commission needs to develop a detailed plan for how the One Nation, One Election would be implemented. Then the government also needs to allocate the necessary resources to implement the One Nation, One Election. Lastly, the public needs to be educated and be aware about the benefits of One Nation, One Election and how it would work. So we can conclude by saying that One Nation, One Election is a complex and challenging reform, and it is not clear when or if it will be implemented in India. However, it is an important issue that deserves serious consideration, and it is possible that it could be implemented in the future. So we have seen all the aspects related to One Nation, One Election. We'll be back again with a new topic. Thank you.